Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Chris Balas and Anthony Broome, who is live from Indianapolis at the NFL Combine there, I believe in the media room with the headphones on there. He just got done talking to Hassan Haskins. So we'll talk about some Combine storylines heading in here to all the guys working out over the weekend. We're presented by Manscaped. Use the promo code 20GoBlue for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. So, support our great sponsors there. Anthony, let's throw it to you first about Hassan Haskins, who was just at the podium, was dealing with that injury that held him out of the Senior Bowl. Might compete, it seems like, this week in drills. I think it's a big week for him, especially with this 40-yard dash. What did you hear out of him?
Yeah, typically, when guys come to this event, now that they have these pro days that they do, some guys will dip out of those events just to give themselves extra time to prepare for it. Hassan had revealed that he did suffer a high ankle sprain in the Orange Bowl, so that's why he pulled out of the Senior Bowl stuff. Seems good to go, healthy, ready to compete, and ready to get into some of those events, just not 100% sure what he's going to participate in. So they will do their on-field drill work on Friday as we're recording this Thursday. So we'll see what he'll come up with. Other than that, pretty light day for Michigan guys here. Andrew Stuber spoke a little bit earlier. Still need to sift through that. I missed that session on the way in, but Hassan, we know what he is. To me, we were talking about before we record, he is a multiple year NFL player, at least a special teamer. I would think he'll probably be in a backfield rotation somewhere as a number 2 or a short yardage back. So, and we know the type of guy he is, the type of character he brings to the table. So I think that he'll do pretty well in these, a lot of this is, the interviews, the steak dinners, right across the street at St. Elmo's and all those types of things. We know that he'll do, he's a very calm and respectful guy and someone that a lot of his teammates looked up to. So we know Hassan and all these Michigan guys here, there's 8 of them. I think they'll all test pretty well, and I think they'll interview very well too.
Yeah, Hassan Haskins, weirdly, is one of my things I'm most excited to track this week because I'm just intrigued. He has so many tools in the toolbox as a running back, but doesn't have quite the speed. So I just want to see how he tests and what his stock is coming out of this. And I agree with you, AB, as we were talking before. He's going to be playing football for a long time. He has different roles he could play. Chris, throwing to you. Michigan's got all sorts of storylines heading in here. You have some of the under-the-radar type of guys like Chris Hinton, Vincent Gray, and Josh Ross. You have the, first-rounders and David Ojabo, potential first overall pick in Aiden Hutchinson, Dax Hill right on the line of first and second round. What are you most excited kind of to track here during the Combine and see what comes of it?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not a big combine guy, and I never have been. I'll be honest, because I think football players are football players. Measurables are important, and that's very true. And I think Hassan Haskins is going to test, other than the 40, I think he's going to test extremely well. Everybody talks about what a freak athlete he is, and we've seen it when he's leaping people and cone drills and things like that. But more than anything, it's like Denard Robinson said when he was talking on John Jansen's In the Trenches podcast. You look for football players, and I think that's what he is. I think he's one of those guys that can stay in the league for 5 to 7 years as long as he stays healthy. Give people stuff on special teams. Maybe be a Le'Veon Bell type back, not to that extent probably, but I think he's really got the shiftiness and the football IQ and the want to. And the toughness to last in that league. Let's be honest, guys. That's a man's game. So I love that about him. Other than that, Chris Hinton, how's he going to hold up? What's his strength like? That's something that I'm very interested to see. How strong is he? We saw some improvement from him, obviously, this year. But you know what? I think he's got a long way to go. So I'm going to be watching that one as well.
AB, you're down there here for the next 2 days. What are you most excited for beyond Haskins? And I know, we haven't listened to what Stuber had to say yet, but the rest of the guys, there's a lot. Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon, Aiden Hutchinson, that's going to be the top battle I feel like people are looking at too.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off what Chris was saying about the Combine, I mean, to me, it's just another big networking event. Like we would go to job fairs and stuff. I do think that the on-field stuff is important. Certainly for a guy like, Aiden Hutchinson, that's a guy I'm watching. We know he's good. Now he'll test on Saturday. I'll be gone by then, but how does that guy, what type of 40 does he run? What does he, he's another guy that was, has been mentioned as a freak athlete. And I think there's kind of been this weird narrative that, in this Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson debate that Thibodeau's a far superior athlete and that Hutchinson does everything he does just by power. I'm really interested to see how Aiden tests and all the explosive stuff too. And I think he'll test really well there, to be honest with you. So to me, that's the biggest storyline for the Michigan guys is one, does Aiden show that he has that kind of stranglehold on being a top 3 pick, which I believe he does. And I know the teams down here are in love with him already. Not many will have a shot at him, a couple at the top of the board. But other than that, David Ojabo, I know there are questions about him. We know that he'll test well. Dax Hill, I think, will test extremely well. This is an event that is tailor-made for a guy like that. So someone to look at, that can maybe get into maybe the middle part of that first round. Other than that, Hinton, I share those same questions. We'll see how far he comes between the time that the season ended and the time the draft comes. Vincent Gray is kind of on the fringe as well. Stuber, where is he a guard? Is he a tackle? There are storylines with every single guy that's down here. So it is interesting to kind of retweak your perception of what players are to what the NFL sees them as. Because we know Hassan Haskins, phenomenal football player, phenomenal college football player. How does that guy fit in at the next level? How does he, because like I said, the testing stuff is, it's not the be all end all, but, it does kind of, if you don't run a fast 40 or you're a step slow here or there, that does cap your pro potential. So we'll see what happens there. I like this group. I think there are several multi-year starters in this group. I think there are a lot of good depth guys in this group. Michigan always sends, high character guys. So it's just a matter of where do they wind up setting up on these boards coming out of this weekend?
Yeah, and David Ojabo and Dax Hill, as you said, they don't have a ton to worry about other than just completely screwing it up because they're such freak athletes as well. David Ojabo is more built for this than he is, stopping the run and things like that. And that's not a knock on him. He's a specialist, and there's a huge place for that in the NFL. Same with Dax Hill. I was reading some scouting reports on him. One NFL executive said they don't feel like he stays dialed in, in coverage as much as he could. But there's buzz that he may run a sub 4.3 or in the 4.3s in the 40 and be one of the top 5 guys, fastest guys at the entire combine. So he's kind of got, that side of things, like the football part. There's some questions there, but you can work that out. Same with the Ojabo, but both are going to test really well. Anything else on the combine before we move on to some spring football talk and then hoops?
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's stick with football then and talk about the week of spring practice that has maybe been discussed more than any other week of any spring practice because they're off in a weird scheduling quirk this week for spring break, but we'll get back at it on Monday, starting back up in pads as of last Friday. We talked about some of this stuff last week, but Chris, I wanted to throw it to you first, I guess, and maybe anything that you're hearing or anything that you're feeling about this group as they, are still kind of embarking on spring ball.
Yeah, they are very happy with a lot of their positions, guys. And the ones that they aren't are the obvious ones. The defensive line, again, losing Chris Hinton. There's a chance, guys, that they're going to talk Donovan Jeter into coming back. And that would be interesting and help depth up front, but they need some guys in the portal. There are guys working in the NIL department and trying to land some of these guys because that's what it takes. Let's be honest, guys. It's different now. It's all legal, right? It's like you go out and you can buy yourself a defensive lineman, and so to speak, in the transfer portal. So I think you're going to see that happen where they're going to really try to bolster that position. Junior Colson's made a huge move. Olu Oluwatimi is going to be an upgrade at center, and Andrew Vistardis had a really good year. He improved dramatically, and what a Michigan man, if for lack of a better word, what he persevered through just to help lead Michigan to a title in that 6th year. But I think Oluwatimi's really a better athlete and a better center. And some in the building have said he could have gone pro this year and been drafted. So that's really kind of a steal. So very interested to see what the offense is going to look like without Haskins. Are they going to rely more on the passing game and getting the ball into the playmakers' hands? I will not use the words speed and space, but I do want to see more touches for those guys. Donovan Edwards out of the backfield. I think you can use two back sets at sometimes and use him as a receiver on wheel routes and things like that. So Mikey Sainer is still playing at nickelback. Let's see if he stays there. He's still listed as a wide receiver on the roster. So how's that going to play out? Because that wide receiver room, guys, is just absolutely stacked. And so not Ohio State type stacked, but really stacked compared to just about everybody else in the conference, probably more so than anybody else in the conference. So those are the things I'm watching. And of course, the quarterback battle, we'll see how that plays out. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, real quick before you jump in, AB. Chris, smart of you not to use the word speed and space. Some people on Twitter out there will block you if you continue to use those words. Go ahead, AB. I'll leave it there.
No comment.
Physical, smart, and precise with the blocks. I like it. Yeah, I mean, I would echo all the things that Chris has said. Also, I've heard the feedback from the wide receiver room with Ron Bellamy there has been extremely positive so far. I'm talking extreme, like same type of impact that Mike Hart had last year in terms of how guys are picking stuff up and learning with a dedicated position coach. Really excited to see how that develops. I think we've talked about that here before. Something that, as I've stewed about it, since spring football started, I'm really excited to see how this young secondary comes along because, there's a lack of proven depth there, but it's a lot of guys, a lot of young athletic guys. They address their athleticism and their length in a big way during this recruiting class, this 2022 cycle. And I think a lot of those guys are going to find the field early. Will Johnson being one of them. I think Keon Saab will be in the mix. Zeke Berry's not there yet, but I think he'll wind up being in the mix with a good fall camp. So everything so far has, it seems like all the guys from position groups that I've heard some stuff from, everyone is, if there were any residual effects from what the Harbaugh situation and the outcome of the Orange Bowl, it's gone. Like those guys are locked in. They've had a great couple months of conditioning and workouts. And my understanding is a pretty productive first week of spring football until, this week it's just kind of you hit the pause button on it. So everything's great so far. It's exciting. I mean, I know people ask, what do you do once the football season's over? It's like, well, we just wait for more football. And that's, a lot of work's being put in right now. And you'd like to see some of those questions answered. I think they'll have to dip into the portal probably for a third running back. I know they'll give Tavier a shot in the spring to see if he can, you not replace Hassan Haskins, but you're going to need a power guy, a third down back to pick up some short yardage situations. And I don't know if that guy's on the roster right now. So that's probably somewhere they look in the portal, as well as defensive line, pass rushers, even at linebacker. I think they could probably use another body or two, but you can't plug all those situations. But like I said, right now, I think they feel pretty good about where they're at.
I'll say this, you can't, part of the reason you can is because you're already over the scholarship limit. You're going to have some guys leave at the end of spring, and then more guys leave if you want to bring other ones in. So that's part of it. So that's why they're kind of limiting it to the defensive line at this point, and then perhaps the running backs. I think that kind of speaks to Tavi Dunlap too, even though they say they like him. You would think that, okay, because he's a bigger back, right? I mean, he's more in the Hassan Haskins mold. So the fact that they're looking a little bit makes you wonder, it must just be that he's not ready.
Yeah. And he is intriguing to me because he was kind of the guy that they took knowing that they were probably going to, or they were going to fight like hell to get Donovan Edwards anyway. So, he was kind of just a take knowing that you wanted to get, and thank God they got Donovan Edwards. Looking back on it. But as you said, Chris, that's what I was going to say is easier said than done when it comes to looking to the portal. That's why basically they're looking to Donovan Jeter in like the real life portal. He's in like a life portal right now. What's he going to do with his life? Take a shot at the NFL probably and then potentially move on to another career if it doesn't work out. The USFL is a thing now as well. But it's like maybe we'll get you back. You can do an NIL deal and you can make as much as you would or whatever. And it's kind of the same thing on the basketball front when you think about some of these guys as well. If you're not a top-tier NBA prospect, you could potentially make more at Michigan. And I know you have to go to school and everything, but you get a degree. Donovan Jeter probably has a couple degrees by now based on how long he's been there, but it's interesting. And Anthony, I will say this. I've been thinking about, and you hear some buzz about the cornerbacks. It could potentially be as good as last year because Vince Gray, while he was much improved, still had his limitations. I'm fascinated to see what he does down there at the combine because he's one of those guys that I was surprised he got an invite, to be honest, and that Brad Hawkins didn't. I thought Hawkins was a snub and that he can still do some things in the NFL. You talk about special teams, particularly with him. I think he has a future there as well if defense doesn't work out. But Will Johnson, is he good enough? This spring will be big for him. Is Jamon Green, who's going to be in his 5th year, sticking around? Is he good enough to, with his experience and everything, to lock down that spot? Maybe you move Will Johnson to the nickel. He splits time with somebody in different situations. Keon Saab, another guy. So the secondary is fascinating to me. I think it'll be a little worse, especially at safety, but they still have a ton of talent there that's young. And if they can fit some pieces together, I think it can be really good. Anything else on spring ball before we move on to basketball? It's a great time of year, isn't it? I mean, incredible.
It is, assuming they win tonight or win one of the next 2 games, because I don't want to be covering the NIT guys. So, and I don't think people understand. Let's get to basketball. I don't think people understand. This is a tough game tonight. This is an Iowa team. Haven't they lost like one of their last 7, and that was to Michigan?
Yeah, there's 7 out of 8, and that game was right in the middle there to Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was at home. So what a big win for Michigan that was. And then, but to win at Ohio State, of course, Nebraska did too. But that's the weirdness of the Big Ten, guys. It's just you never know what you're going to get on a given night. So, that's a big game. You got to win one of these next 2, and then you're in. And then let's see what happens, because the ceiling for this team is relatively high, I think, if they're playing well. With Caleb Houston playing the way he is, and credit him for turning things around and getting it, not really turning things around, but, continuing to progress. Everybody had these super high expectations for him. Halfway through, things started to click. He's playing better defensively. He's making shots, which is what he does. But some of the other things, some of the drives and dishes that he's doing, some of the cuts that he's making have really been next level stuff. So it's nice to see him come around. And it's been fun to watch because, like Phil Martelli said, he's a great kid from a great family. So, I'm anxious to see what happens tonight, what their legs are like, because you want to talk about a team that likes to get up and down. That's Iowa. So, and after spending a good, 30-something minutes sprinting back against Michigan State's offensive pace, that they're going to have to come back and do the same thing tonight. So, but I do like the way this team's coming together. I like their rotations. I think Phil Martelli's doing a heck of a job, and the assistant coaches, Howard Isley and Sadi Washington, who I've always really thought highly of, they're doing a fantastic job. So that's the reason I love this time of year. And we've been spoiled, guys, let's be honest, for the last 12, 15 years with John Beilein and now Juwan Howard. I hope that continues.
Yeah, this is, a huge is not a big enough word. It's not a huge enough word to describe what they have ahead of them these next 2 games. There's a lot, as we've talked about, to still play for in terms of the Big Ten tournament. The 4th seed is not out of the question for them. Now, that would include Iowa going 0-2. It would include Ohio State going 0-2. I also think that there was one other scenario in there. Maryland would have to beat Michigan State.
Yeah, they need Maryland to beat Michigan State. Yep.
So that's still in the running for them. As of now, I think they would still be in the 8-9 game, which would have us here, at 11. I said here because I'll be back here a week from now in the 11:30 a.m. game on Thursday. They could, who knows? Friday is still in play for them. But right now, don't look ahead to next week. I think this is an extremely winnable game ahead of you. Iowa's played well, but as we talked about the last time that these 2 teams played each other, Iowa has the profile it does on a site like KenPom or with some of the analytics because they run up their efficiency margins against teams that aren't very good. I think when Caleb Houston plays, and I said this before, they don't need him to be 21 points a game, Caleb Houston. If he gives them 14, 15, 16 like he did the other night and is really efficient, as he typically is when he plays well, you just see what that opens up for a guy like Hunter Dickinson and, a guy, or even, Devontae Jones driving the lane or Moussa Diabate or, it's not a hot take. You don't need to be a basketball savant to know that if you are able to score the basketball and hit your shots from outside, it's going to open things up for everybody else. And I'll say this too. we've seen some really, really good Hunter Dickinson performances in these 2 years that he's been at Michigan. For what my money's worth, the other night, not just because it was a career high with 33 points, that was the guy, that was a National Player of the Year caliber performance from him. And I know a lot of people were hoping that they would get a season's worth of that out of him, and he still quietly put up some very good numbers. That guy shows up in these next 2 games and then into next week and then into the NCAA tournament. If you get there, I'm telling you, I mean, I made the bold claim a couple weeks ago or last week, whenever it was, that Michigan probably likely can't fulfill what the preseason hype on it was. That guy plays like that. And a guy like Houston plays like a lottery pick. All of a sudden, like, yeah, the resume is what it is, but all of a sudden those are the things that we expected coming into the year. And, given the right matchup and you just get on a roll, and, I would imagine when Juwan comes back, it's not going to be a deterrent. It will only be a boost for them. They could potentially set themselves up to make things interesting here. So I think them finding a way to get in the NCAA tournament, maybe if you can crack the second weekend of the NCAA tournament with this group, with how this year has gone, I think that would be an overwhelming success.
Yeah, I agree. And the one thing I will say is I want to see how Caleb Houston, guys, shoots on a neutral floor, because we've seen he's not been good on the road. He's been extremely good at home. If he can do it on the neutral floor, that's what's going to make a huge difference. And I want to say something about Devontae Jones. We've got a couple guys on the message board. For some reason, they just cut him down relentlessly. And the guy's quietly had a really great second half of the year and really starting to get it. He's been one of the catalysts to this, and been fantastic at times. So credit to him for persevering as well. He's a big reason for the turnaround too.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of that, something I was going to bring up, Chris, I know it's tough. You have to run back and get back on defense against Michigan State, but you have a similar game plan there. So you can kind of plug that right into Iowa, who averages over 18 points per game in transition, which is crazy. One of the top marks in the country. But look at this. Devontae Jones, the silver lining of him picking up 2 fouls, one of them very, very dumb, early in that Michigan State game, is he played just 21 minutes in that game. Moussa Diabate, who went off for 28 points at Iowa and has a huge matchup tonight against Keegan Murray, played just 24 minutes. And Caleb Houston was at 28 because he sat the second half of the first half with foul trouble too. So a little fresher than maybe you would think coming off a 48-hour turnaround. As we mentioned maybe last week, that they're on spring break, so no class, so more time to get treatment, more time to sleep in, more time to watch film. All of that, I think, helps as well. But you're right. They're going to have to be fresh tonight, bring the energy. It's senior night. It's spring break, so the energy's down in terms of the student section. But this is such a big game, and it's going to be very tough because Iowa's playing much better than they've played all season long. The defense is now, in the last month, down to top 50 in the country, which is like, for them, that's like top 10. It's 80 for the year, so that tells you how bad it was even before that. So they're improving there. Keegan Murray's not going to go 9 of 23 tonight. I think he's going to play much better and not probably cramp up like he did last time as well. So I think you're right, Chris. It's not like, oh, we beat him on the road, we automatically get to beat him at home. No, it's not a shoe-in. But I do think Michigan will win this game. There's desperation on the line. It's you just held Michigan State to 9 transition points. That's going to be huge tonight as well. And I just feel like that with the way Houston's shooting at home and the way Michigan's playing at home, they should be able to get it done.
And one thing that I'll say is you aren't going to see them going under ball screens like they did against Michigan State.
You can't.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
No, by Sadi Washington. It's going to be a different game plan in that respect. In transition, these guys are going to be lighting threes. Bohannon's going to be shooting from the block M, right?
Yep.
So at midcourt. So that's where you got to pick up. And it's going to be different because the floor will be spread a little bit more. So your transition defense will be a little bit different. But at the same time, you should be able to score some points too. So that's what's going to be intriguing to me. I'm just glad to be back watching ball again. And I'll say this, after that Ohio State game on Sunday, let the starters rest until Thursday because, maybe do some walkthroughs and things like that, because I think rest at this point is more important than anything you're going to pick up in practice other than maybe shooting and things like that.
Yeah, and one more thing to note, Patrick McCaffrey questionable for tonight's game. He missed the game on Monday with a hip injury. That's huge. Connor McCaffrey was plugged in. Oh, they just plug in another McCaffrey in the starting lineup. 10th-year senior Connor McCaffrey in there, and he's been shooting really well lately after really, dealing with a back injury earlier in the season. His stats are like 3 points a game, but lately he's shooting the three at like in the 40s percent, and Iowa's shooting the three close to 40% over the last month. So they've improved in that area as a team, but that's big. Patrick McCaffrey averages almost 11 points a game. To be questionable for this one. If you're Michigan, you probably hope he doesn't go. You're without your head coach. You can, like Tom Izzo says, he doesn't wish that injuries and stuff on people anymore, which is just funny. If you're Michigan, you can be like, we hope he doesn't play. We don't have our coach. I feel like you have a little bit of an excuse there.
Yeah, you're probably right. But hey, all hands on deck. I don't care. Just win the game, right? And let's move it on. Let's move on to the Big Ten tournament. AB, it's going to be fun down there. Back to St. Elmo's. Clay, we'll probably let you come as long as your dad pays for it.
That's right. Prime 47, though, maybe.
Prime 47, that too. We'll be there for 4 days.
Yeah,
matter?
True.
If I get in line now and just stay there, like you guys can just meet me a week from now.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, there you have it.
That's right. All right, so that is going to be our show for this week. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody. Michigan against Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State on Sunday. Stay tuned at thewolverine.com for all of our NFL Combine coverage as well. We got Anthony, as mentioned, boots on the ground down there in Indy. Maybe we'll just get him an Airbnb for the next week. Might as well keep him down there. And looking forward to potentially some postseason ball for Michigan as well. So stick with us at thewolverine.com for all of that coverage.